The stars were quiet, too quiet. A broken planet moved slowly around its fading sun, its surface cracked, its cities ruined, and its people weak. Long ago it had been alive with color, with voices, with hope. But now, only shadows and silence remained. The galaxy had turned its back on them. Once they were part of great councils. Once they traded with many worlds. Once they believed in unity. But when war came and hunger followed, no one answered their call. The powerful empires closed their gates. The merchants raised their prices so high that no aid could reach. And slowly, one by one, the stars that once felt like friends became cold. This world was left to die, and the galaxy did not care. On the streets of the last city, children searched for scraps. Their eyes too tired, their bodies too thin. The elders told stories of brighter days, but even their voices grew weak. Every day was the same. Wake, search, fail, sleep, repeat. It was survival, not living. And in the shadows despair grew. The leaders of the world stood in silence. They had begged, they had pleaded, they had sent messages into the void, but their screens stayed empty. No ship came to help, no food arrived from the stars. Every request was ignored, and when the last message was returned with a single cruel reply, not worth saving, their hope was broken, but still in the dark someone kept the signal alive. A simple call repeated again and again, not a demand, not a command, just a whisper carried into the endless night. Help us. We are dying. For years it echoed across space, unheard, unanswered, forgotten. But the universe has strange ways. Signals travel far, and sometimes they reach the ears of those who should never have heard them. Sometimes they reach the ears of the unexpected. Far away, on a small blue world, humanity was listening. They were not the oldest species, not the strongest, not the most advanced, but they were stubborn, curious, restless. They built machines to look at the stars. They built ears to hear what others ignored. And one day the whisper reached them. A scientist on Earth heard it first. A broken signal, weak, damaged, hard to understand. But beneath the noise, the words were clear enough. Help us, we are dying. He froze. He replayed it again and again. He called others. Together they cleaned the sound, shaped it, tested it. And the truth became clear. This was no echo of human voice. This was something else. Something alien. Someone out there was asking for help. The message spread through labs, through universities, through governments. At first many thought it was a trick, a false signal. A clever game, maybe just the universe playing with static. But the scientist shook his head. No, listen, they are real, they are desperate, they are alive. Across Earth, debate began. Some said ignore it. Some said it was too far, too dangerous. Some said humanity had its own problems, its own wars, its own hunger. Why risk everything for strangers who might not even thank them? Why help those the galaxy had already abandoned? And yet, there were others, voices that rose louder every day. Voices that remembered what it felt like to be weak, to be ignored, to be forgotten. Voices that remembered Earth's own history. Times when others turned away. Times when survival came only because someone finally stood up and said no. They argued. They shouted. They stood in crowded halls and on empty streets. And one word kept rising above the noise. Humanity helps. Back on the dying world, the people had no idea their signal was finally heard. They sat under a broken sky. They lit fires to warm themselves. They told stories of what they once had. But they no longer dreamed of tomorrow because tomorrow looked the same as today. Empty, silent, cold, and yet far away. Ships were being built. Engines were tested. Maps were drawn. And for the first time in many years, their future was no longer only their own. Something was moving. Something was coming. And though they did not know it yet, humanity was on its way. The galaxy had abandoned them, but the galaxy had not met Earth. The galaxy did not know humanity, and soon it would. The whisper had been heard. The story had begun, and the stars would never be the same. Long before the world was abandoned, it had trusted the galaxy, it had trusted the councils, the empires, the alliances. It had believed that unity meant safety, that friendship meant loyalty, but trust can be a cruel thing, and in the end, trust was what destroyed them. They were not the strongest race, their armies were small, their fleets few. But they worked hard, they traded honestly, they offered what they could, they gave medicine, they gave rare minerals, they gave art and knowledge. They were kind. They believed kindness would be returned. But when famine came, when sickness spread, when war clouds gathered, the galaxy looked away. At first it was silence. They sent messages to the Great Council. No answer. They sent pleas to their trade partners. No answer. They called for aid from their allies. But every channel went dark soon. Silence turned into excuses. One empire said, "We are busy with our own crisis." Another said, "We cannot risk our fleets." A third said, "Your problem is too far, too costly, too small." And slowly, the truth became clear. No one was coming. No one cared. Ships that once carried goods now passed them by. Convoys flew around their system, refusing to stop. Even pirates stopped raiding because there was nothing left to steal. The world was collapsing and the galaxy pretended it did not see. In the great halls of power, leaders whispered, "Why waste resources on a dying world? Why help those who cannot pay back? Why risk ships and lives for people who are already finished?" And so, with cold words, they were erased, not from maps, but from memory. The betrayal was not fast. It was slow, 1,000 small cuts, one contract canceled, one message ignored, one ship turned away. But slow betrayal cuts deeper, because hope dies piece by piece, until nothing is left. The people of the world tried to fight. They worked their fields. They built shelters. They kept their spirits alive. But famine does not care about pride. Disease does not care about courage. Every day their numbers grew smaller. Every month another city went dark. And still, the galaxy did nothing. The children asked, "Why will no one help us?" The elders had no answer. The leaders had no answer. How do you explain to a child that the galaxy has decided they are not worth saving? In the dark chambers of the council, voices argued. Some spoke of mercy. But mercy is a weak word when profit rules. Some spoke of duty. But duty is forgotten. When danger comes and when the final vote was called, the decision was simple. Abandon them. The message was short, cruel in its honesty. Your world is no longer part of the council. You will receive no aid. You are not worth saving. When the message reached the dying world, silence followed. No one moved. No one spoke. The words burned deeper than hunger, deeper than sickness. They were not just abandoned. They were judged. Judged as worthless, judged as nothing. The leaders lowered their heads. The people cried, and hope cracked like glass. The galaxy they once believed in had betrayed them, not with weapons, but with silence, not with bombs, but with cold words. Yet even as despair spread, one act of defiance remained. A small group of engineers kept the signal alive. Every day they sent the same words into the stars. "Help us, we are dying." They did not know if anyone listened. They did not know if anyone cared, but they sent it anyway, because even in betrayal, even in abandonment, they refused to vanish quietly, and far away, the galaxy watched them fall, watched them suffer, watched them die. To the great empires, it was just one more world fading, one more forgotten story, one more problem erased by silence. But they were wrong, because the signal traveled farther than anyone expected. It slipped through the cracks of space. It moved beyond the trade lanes, beyond the borders, beyond the empires, until one day, it reached a small blue planet, a planet the galaxy had laughed at, ignored, underestimated, a planet called Earth. And humanity listened. Humanity heard. The betrayal of the galaxy was almost complete. But the story was not finished, because where the galaxy saw weakness, humanity saw something else. Where the galaxy saw no value, humanity saw life. And in that choice, history would change. The galaxy had betrayed them, but humanity had not yet spoken. And when humanity finally spoke, the stars would hear words they had never heard before. Words the galaxy was not ready for. Words that would echo forever. With you, always. The signal drifted across the black sea of space. It was weak, broken, and almost lost, but against all odds it reached Earth. At first it was nothing more than static, a faint whisper hidden inside noise. But then, as machines listened closer, the words appeared, "Help us, we are dying." The first person to hear it was not a general or a leader. It was a scientist alone in a quiet lab late at night. He almost ignored it. So many signals came from space. Most were random, meaningless, echoes of stars. But something in the pattern made him stop. He leaned closer. He pressed his headphones tight and his heart froze. Those were not random sounds, they were words. He replayed the signal again and again. The more he listened, the more certain he became. Someone, somewhere, was speaking. Not from Earth, not from any human station, but from far beyond. The scientist sent the recording to his colleagues. At first they laughed, another joke, another strange piece of space noise. But when they cleaned the sound, when they filtered the layers, the laughter stopped. The words were clear now. "Help us. We are dying." The news spread fast. Across labs, across networks, across countries. Every scientist wanted to study it. Every government wanted answers. Was it real? Was it a trick? Was it some old message bouncing off forgotten satellites? Or was it the impossible? A call from another world. Debates exploded. In universities and military rooms and television broadcasts, some called it a hoax. Some called it danger. Others whispered about destiny. The signal was tested again and again. It was no trick. The voice belonged to a people, far away, a people who were dying. For the first time in history, Earth faced a question it had never truly asked. If someone out there calls for help, will humanity answer? The politicians hesitated. They spoke of risks, of costs, of distance. They asked, why should Earth risk its people, its resources for strangers? What if it was a trap? What if helping them brought war? Earth had its own problems, poverty, conflict, hunger. Was it wise to reach out when humanity was still struggling with itself? But outside the halls of power, the world was alive with argument. People listened to the signal. They heard the broken voices, the desperation, and something inside them stirred. It was more than curiosity. It was recognition, because humanity knew what it felt like to be weak, to be ignored, to be left behind. Students carried signs that read, "If not us, then who?" Doctors wrote letters saying, "We cannot ignore the dying." Soldiers stood up and said, "We have faced impossible battles before, and we endured." From cities to villages, the debate became a fire, and that fire spread faster than any government could control. In one quiet moment, a mother showed the signal to her child. The child listened, tilted his head, and asked, "Why don't we help them?" Simple words, but they struck deeper than speeches. Because children do not see borders or politics or profit. They only see need, and humanity could not pretend it did not hear anymore. Inside the United Nations, the final decision was being shaped. Representatives shouted, argued, accused one another. But outside, millions of voices demanded one answer: go, help, stand. Finally, the leaders could not resist the tide. The vote was called, and the answer was clear. Earth would respond. But this was not a mission of conquest. It was not for land or treasure or glory. It was something purer, something that made humanity different. It was a mission of mercy. Ships would carry food, medicine, engineers, teachers, not weapons, not chains. For the first time, humanity would go to the stars not for itself but for another. Preparations began. Factories worked day and night. Engines were tested. Crews were trained. The best minds gathered to chart a path through dangerous space. Every corner of Earth contributed. Some gave technology, some gave manpower, some gave prayers. It was not one nation, not one flag. It was all of humanity, united in purpose. Far across the galaxy, the dying world still whispered, "Help us, we are dying." They had no idea anyone had heard. They had no idea that on a distant blue planet, billions of hearts had already answered, "Yes, we hear you. We are coming." For the first time in centuries, Earth looked to the stars not with fear but with hope. The signal had awakened something deep in human nature. Not greed, not conquest, but compassion. And in that choice, humanity was about to write a story the galaxy would never forget. The galaxy had left a world to die, but humanity would not. Because humanity carried a truth that no empire understood. A truth that echoed in every city, every camp, every lab, every ship. With you, always. And with that promise, the engines roared to life. The journey had begun, the stars were waiting. The world had argued, the voices had clashed, the doubts had been heavy. But now the moment had come. Humanity had to decide. Would they look away like the galaxy had done, or would they risk everything? For strangers across the stars in the great chambers of the United Nations, silence filled the air. Every seat was taken, every screen alive with faces of leaders, generals, scientists, and advisors. For weeks they had debated, for weeks they had fought with words. Some called it madness, others called it destiny. But now no more words could delay the choice. The vote was here. The Secretary General stood. Her voice was calm, but her hands trembled. "We have heard the call," she said. "The galaxy left them to die, but we are not the galaxy. We are humanity, and we must decide today." Around her, whispers spread. Some leaders leaned forward with determination. Others leaned back with fear. The weight of history pressed on. Every shoulder, a delegate from a great power rose. He said, "We cannot risk war with forces we do not understand. We cannot risk our resources, our fleets, our lives, for strangers who may not even thank us. We should stay silent, protect Earth, and wait." Another leader rose in answer. Her voice was sharp. "If we do nothing, then we are no better than the ones who abandoned them. Are we willing to let children starve while we argue about risk? Are we willing to ignore mercy when it calls? What will history write about us if we turn away?" The chamber erupted. Some cheered, some shouted, some demanded order. But beneath the chaos, a decision was forming. On the streets outside, the people had already chosen. Crowds filled cities with banners. "Help them," the banners read. "Stand with them," the chants cried. From factories to farms, from soldiers to students, humanity had spoken. They wanted their leaders to act. They wanted their species to be remembered not for fear but for courage. Inside the chamber, the Secretary General lifted her hand. "Enough," she said. "The vote begins now." One by one, nations cast their choice. Yes. No. Yes. The voices echoed like drumbeats. The numbers rose. Every count pulled humanity closer to its fate. And then the final tally appeared. The decision was clear. Humanity would go. The chamber shook with sound. Some cheered, some wept, some sat in silence, but none could deny the truth. The choice was made. The path was set. History had turned across the earth. Bells rang, fireworks rose, voices shouted with joy. For the first time, humanity was united. Not for war, not for conquest, but for mercy. The people of Earth looked to the sky and they whispered the same promise. "With you, always." Now the work began. Shipyards lit up the night. Engines roared on testing grounds. Scientists worked without sleep. They designed vessels not for battle, but for survival. Ships that could carry food, water, medicine, tools, and hope. Armies did not march for war. Instead, they trained for rescue, for building, for healing. The greatest mission in human history was underway. But still, not all were convinced. In hidden rooms, generals warned of danger. "What if this is a trap?" they said. What if these strangers are not weak but waiting to strike? What if the galaxy turns against us when we interfere? The warnings were sharp, but the decision stood. Humanity would go, whatever the cost. Among the chosen crews, there was no fear. Pilots trained their hands. Doctors sharpened their skills. Engineers studied alien signals. They were not forced. They volunteered. Again and again they said the same words. If not us, then who? One night, in a quiet press room, a young journalist asked a pilot why he chose to go. The pilot smiled. Tired but sure. Because when the call for help is heard, you answer. That is what makes us human. And those words spread like fire across Earth. They were printed, repeated, sung, and remembered. Not orders, not commands, just simple truth. That humanity would stand, even when the galaxy would not far. Away the dying world still cried into the void. They did not know ships were being built for them. They did not know a planet they had never seen was preparing to save them. They believed they were alone, forgotten, erased. But soon, their night would end. Soon, they would see lights in their sky. And those lights would not be weapons, but salvation. The galaxy had betrayed them, but Earth had made a different decision. A decision that would shake every empire. A decision that would rewrite the rules of power. For once humanity set its course, it did not turn back. And now, with engines ready and hearts united, there was no turning back. The world that was left to die would not die alone. The galaxy might not care, but humanity did. And soon the stars would learn the weight of that choice because humanity had spoken, and humanity's decision was final. With you, always. The day finally came. Engines thundered across the sky. Flames lit up the oceans and humanity's ships left Earth. Billions watched as the great vessels rose into the stars. They were not warships. They were lifelines. Each one carried food, water, medicine, engineers, doctors, teachers, and hope. Each one carried the promise humanity had made. With you, always. The journey was long. Across the cold black of space the fleet traveled, through asteroid belts, past wandering comets, into regions no human eye had ever seen. Every crew member carried fear. But behind the fear was determination. Because this was not about one nation or one people. This was about humanity as a whole. For the first time in history, Earth was united in a single mission. On the dying world, the signal continued to echo. Help us, we are dying. The people had no idea that anyone had answered. They still searched for scraps of food, still lit fires against the cold, still whispered stories to their children about days long past. Most no longer believed in tomorrow. And then, one night, the skies changed. At first it was a faint glow, a streak of light across the clouds. Children pointed, elders gasped. Many feared it was death finally coming. But the glow grew larger, brighter, stronger, and then the impossible happened. Ships appeared, not alien, not from the galaxy they had begged before, but new, different, unknown. Humanity had arrived. The first landing was quiet. Engines slowed, dust rose, the ground shook. The people gathered, weak and afraid, their eyes wide, their bodies trembling. They had seen ships before, but never like this. These ships carried no banners of empires, no weapons of conquest. They carried symbols no one recognized, symbols of Earth. The doors opened, and out stepped humans, not tall, armored conquerors, not shining gods, but men and women in simple suits, their faces visible, their hands empty. They walked carefully, slowly, with respect. The crowd whispered in disbelief. No one had come for so many years. Why now? Why them? Why humans? A child broke the silence. Her voice was weak but clear. Did you hear us? She asked. The lead human, a doctor with tired eyes, knelt down. He smiled gently and said, Yes, we heard you. We are here now. The crowd erupted. Some cried, some laughed, some fell to their knees. It felt like a dream, like a story told by desperate hearts. But it was real. For the first time in decades, someone had come not to take, but to give. Food was unloaded, clean water poured into broken wells, medicine was handed out, children were treated, wounds healed, fevers broken. Engineers walked the ruined streets, repairing generators, fixing machines, building shelters. Everywhere the humans went, hope followed. At first the aliens could not believe it. They waited for the hidden price. They searched for the trick, because the galaxy had taught them that help never came free. But days passed, and the humans asked for nothing. No gold, no power, no land, only trust. And slowly trust began to grow. Still, not everyone welcomed them. Some elders warned, "These are strangers. What if they betray us too? What if they leave us again?" But even they could not deny what they saw. Children smiling, families eating, lights turning on in homes that had been dark for years. The humans were not like the others. They stayed, they worked, they cared. Far away, the galaxy watched. Signals of the landing spread. Other empires whispered in anger. How dare humanity interfere? How dare they break the silence? How dare they do what we refused to do? Threats were spoken in secret halls, but humanity did not hear. They were too busy healing, too busy standing, too busy keeping their promise. In one village, an old man asked a young human soldier, "Why did you come? Why risk your lives for us when all others abandoned us?" The soldier looked at him with steady eyes. "Because no one deserves to be left to die alone," he said, and the old man wept. Day by day, hope spread like fire. Cities began to breathe again. The sound of laughter returned. The world that was once silent now echoed with life. And everywhere, one phrase was whispered again and again, "With you, always." But beneath the joy, a shadow grew, because the galaxy had noticed, and the galaxy was not pleased. The same powers that had betrayed the world were now preparing to punish humanity. Ships were moving. Fleets were gathering. War was coming. Yet for now, on that broken world, no one thought of war. They thought only of survival, of life, of tomorrow. For the first time in generations, tomorrow felt real. And it had come because humanity chose differently. Because humanity had answered the cry. Because humanity had kept its word. The galaxy had abandoned them. But humanity stood beside them, and the bond that began that day would never be broken. Not by fear, not by threats, not by war, because a promise once made was a promise kept, and humanity's promise was clear. With you, always. The galaxy had been silent when the dying world cried for help. The galaxy had turned away when children starved and cities fell. But the galaxy was not silent now, because humanity had dared to do what no one else would. Humanity had stepped into the void, and the empires did not like it. From their shining capitals, alien rulers watched the broadcasts of human ships landing. They saw food being shared, medicine being given, machines being repaired. And what they saw was not mercy. They saw rebellion. Because if one world could be saved, then others would ask the same. If one abandoned people could rise again, then the power of the empires would no longer be absolute. And so they whispered, "This must end." The first warning came as a message. It was sent across the stars, clear and sharp. To the species called humanity, you have interfered in matters that are not yours. Withdraw at once or face the consequences. When the message reached the human fleet, the crews stared at it in silence. It was signed by the High Council of the Galaxy, the same council that had left the world to die, the same council that had called them not worth saving. The human leaders gathered. Generals, scientists, diplomats, captains. They read the I message again and again. And finally, one of them spoke. "They tell us to leave, but we did not come this far to abandon them now." The reply was short. It carried no threats, no excuses, only one line: "With them always." The council was furious. In secret chambers, voices shouted, "They defy us. They insult us. They break the order of the stars." Armies were called. Fleets began to move. Plans were made to crush humanity before their defiance could spread. On the ground, the people of the saved world heard whispers of danger. They saw strange ships moving on the edges of their skies. Fear returned. Will they come to finish what they started, they asked. But the humans stood firm. Doctors kept treating, engineers kept building, soldiers kept watch, and everywhere, the same words echoed, "We do not leave, we do not run, we stay." The galaxy thought humanity was weak. Their fleets were smaller, their weapons fewer, their technology newer, but humanity carried something the empires had long forgotten. They carried memory. They remembered centuries of struggle, of war, of famine, of rebuilding again and again. They remembered what it felt like to be small, to be powerless, to be ignored, and that memory gave them strength. A council spy tried to warn them, "You cannot win, you cannot resist the whole galaxy. When the fleets arrive, you will burn." The human commander answered calmly, "Maybe we will burn, but we will burn standing beside them, not running away." Back on Earth, the news of the threat spread. Fear gripped the people, but fear did not silence them. Instead, protests filled the streets. "If the galaxy wants war, then let them come," voices shouted. "If we must fight, we fight for something greater than ourselves." Never before had humanity spoken with such unity. The decision had already been made in their hearts. They would not abandon their new allies, no matter the cost. The galaxy sent another warning. Sharper this time. "Leave them or you will share their fate." And again, humanity answered with silence. Not the silence of fear, but the silence of defiance. They stayed, they worked, they rebuilt, and the dying world slowly began to breathe again. The empires were confused. Why did humanity risk everything for a people they had only just met? Why fight when there was nothing to gain? They could not understand, because they had forgotten the value of loyalty, of compassion, of promises kept. They had forgotten what it meant to care without profit. And so they saw humanity as dangerous, not because of their weapons, but because of their spirit. In a hidden council chamber, a leader finally spoke the truth. "If humanity is allowed to continue, the stars will change, other worlds will rise, and our power will fall. Humanity must be stopped." The order was given. Warships began to gather, engines roared, fleets formed. The galaxy was preparing to strike. On the small world below, a human doctor stood beside an alien child. He gave her water, medicine, and a smile. She looked at him with wide eyes and asked, "Will you leave us when they come?" The doctor knelt down, placed his hand on her shoulder and said, "No, little one, not now, not ever. We will stand with you." The stars above were filling with fire. The galaxy was ready to resist humanity. But humanity was ready too. Not with greater numbers, not with stronger weapons, but with something more powerful. The will to keep their word. The courage to stand when no one else would. The strength to say what the galaxy had forgotten how to say. "With you, always." The world that had once been silent now echoed with new sounds. The cries of hunger were fading, replaced by the laughter of children. The streets that had been empty now filled with workers and builders. The skies that once showed only darkness now glowed with human ships. Hope was returning. Human engineers worked side by side with alien builders. Together they raised shelters where ruins had been. Together they repaired power lines, cleaned broken wells, and restored farmland. It was not easy. Every tool was short. Every hand was needed. But they worked with a fire no empire could match, because they were not just building walls and homes. They were building trust. The aliens could hardly believe it. Each day they waited for the price to come, waited for the humans to demand payment, to ask for resources or control. But the demand never came. Instead, the humans asked only questions. "What do you need? How can we help?" And for the first time in centuries, the forgotten people felt like they mattered. Children followed the humans wherever they went. They carried tools, they fetched water, they tried to copy every movement. One human teacher opened a small school under the shade of a broken tower. She drew shapes and words on old walls. The alien children listened, their eyes wide. For them, knowledge was a gift greater than gold. And as they learned, they began to dream again. Doctors treated wounds the galaxy had ignored. They delivered. Babies healed the sick, gave sight to the blind. Many of the aliens had thought their diseases were curses with no cure, but the humans treated them with simple medicine. The people wept with relief, not because their bodies were healed, But, because someone had finally cared, day by day the city grew alive again. Lights returned to the streets, water flowed from taps, food grew in fields once dead, and everywhere voices whispered the same words. They came. They stayed. They did not leave us. But beyond the joy, shadows still lingered. The galaxy's fleets were gathering. Threats spread like poison through the stars. The humans knew war might come at any moment, and yet they did not stop. They built faster, worked harder, taught louder, because hope itself was their weapon. One night an alien elder stood before the human commander. "You must go," the elder said. "If you stay, the galaxy will destroy you and they will destroy us too." The commander shook his head. "If we leave, you die. If we stay, maybe we all live. We came to stand with you, and that is what we will do." The elder lowered his eyes, tears filling them. "You do not know what it means to us," he whispered. But the commander smiled softly. "Yes, we do, because once, long ago, we were left alone too." The bond between them grew stronger. Aliens offered what little they had: food, art, songs, stories humans accepted with gratitude, never with greed. The two peoples shared meals around fires. They laughed at their differences. They marveled at their similarities. And for the first time in history, two worlds became one family. The galaxy saw it too. Spies reported the growing unity. They are not just rebuilding a world, they are building an alliance. One warned, "If this continues, the balance of power will shatter." Another said. The council listened in silence, and then gave the order no one wanted to hear: prepare for war. But on the small world, war was not the thought of the day. The thought of the day was tomorrow. The aliens who once saw no future now dreamed of it. Children spoke of becoming teachers, builders, explorers. Mothers sang lullabies not of sorrow but of hope. Fathers planted seeds with steady hands, and humanity stood among them, proud and unshaken. A child once asked a human doctor, "Why do you smile when the galaxy threatens you?" The doctor knelt down and said, "Because hope is stronger than fear, and once hope begins, no one can stop it." The word spread across the world. Hope is stronger than fear. The people repeated it again and again, and soon it became their shield. Even when they looked to the skies and saw war approaching, they did not tremble, because they knew they were no longer alone. The galaxy had abandoned them, but humanity had rebuilt them. The galaxy had given them silence, but humanity had given them songs. The galaxy had left them to die, but humanity had taught them to live. And so, as the world healed, a promise was carved into its very soul, that no empire could erase, that no fleet could destroy, a promise stronger than any weapon: with you always.